So it's been a while, huh? Actually, it's hard to believe that I've been a Project Sekai fan for 3 years now. I actually haven't made many videos on Project Sekai lately. I've been more active on Discord and Reddit. Still, I feel like it wouldn't be a bad idea to do a video on the main story's Project Sekai. I mean, at the very least, I should make a video. Granted, that make people love and appreciate this game. Now let's get started. No, there is no hour-long YouTube intro. Now, I should probably take a moment to say a disclaimer. If I rate a main story down or in the worst tier, it doesn't mean that it's a bad story by any means. It's just, it didn't hit as home for me, or there's something in it I didn't get, or just something very situational. I like all the main stories, but, you know, I'm not going to think every one of them is the best, so with that in mind, let's begin my rating of them. The first one is More Jump, which is probably one of the least rating for me. Yeah, I know, but before you say anything, no, it's not because I'm one of those 9-year-olds that think More Jump is just the cringe story, quote-unquote. It's just that, well, it's a really good emotional story, and I really like Minori's whole leader thing into it as well, but there's just one problem. I don't really know much about the idol industry, meaning because of that, it was kind of hard for me to relate to it outside of Minori's story, because since I'm not an idol or don't know much about it, I don't really understand much about what's going on with Haruka, Ari, and Shizuku, so that's why I'm rating it so far down and not really higher. I do think there's a lot of emotion into it, and it's definitely not one of the weakest story ones whatsoever. It's just, I don't really understand the idol part of it, and since that's what the whole story is about, you get the idea. So yeah, because of this, I'm putting More Jump in the alright story, but not as inspiring tier, only because I don't know much about the idol industry. And with that, the next story I'm going to rank in a similar spot is probably going to be the VBS main story. And like More Jump, it's still a great story, emotional, and it still gets a really good point across, so why am I ranking it as far down as More Jump? Well, to put it simple, in the main story, it feels like it's resolved a little way too fast. Well, not way too, but just fast enough that it's kind of noticeable, and the story at times sort of seemed a little bit random, but maybe that's just my impression, as I'm not much of a VBS fan. Or maybe it was because all I knew about VBS when getting into it was the people who were obsessing over the girl love and boy love shipping part of it. Yeah. It's fine if you like it, and it's still a really good story. Still, it's just doesn't really hit as much for me, and that's really just all I have to say. So, I'm going to also rate VBS in great story, but not my thing tier. I don't really have any other way of saying this. I'm just mostly biased because I don't like it. And now for the first story that I consider going in the great story section. This might actually be a very big surprise to you, but it's actually Wonderland X Showtime, which I'm gonna be honest, I'm surprised too, because when I first read it, I didn't really think I was going to really be giving it much of a chance due to its concerning, toxic, loud minority, which I'm glad that there are Wonderland X Showtime fans that aren't like those people. But it surprisingly turned out to be a great story despite how random it is. wasn't quite sure what I thought about it at first with, well, pretty sure you can guess why I believe it's so random with what's going on in the video, but yeah, you get it. Still, despite that randomness, it's still turned out to be a really great story, although you weren't sure about the characters do end up being pretty likable in the end. My favorite part, honestly, is when the characters drift apart after their argument together. And it gives you a deeper understanding of each of the own characters, which is really nice. It's something I'd say makes a main story very impactful. And when Rui first leaves after Tsukasa blames Nene for what happened at their show, Nene realizes that it was a little bit of her fault. Emu seems sad that she basically forced them into it, and she apologizes to Tsukasa. And they seem ready to drift apart until Tsukasa then remembers why he makes shows in the first place for his younger sister. And I have to admit, that really made me like him when I first read the story. So because of these backstories, it makes you seem to like the characters a lot more. And after Tsukasa apologizes, you realize he's not really as bad as he seems from the beginning. And everyone tries to keep going. Although there is one thing keeping me from basically ranking it any higher. How does Tsukasa just casually forget why he wants to perform? Like, I'm so confused because this is never explained and it's so stupid. Did he get hit in the head by an anvil and just forget that way? Did he get sent to another universe somehow? Someone needs to explain this to me with their lore knowledge because what? Anyway, side tangent aside, I'm putting Wonderland X Showtime in the pretty good and emotional story. And now, of course, for the first story I am going to talk about that goes in the highest rank is Night Court at 25, which actually a lot of people in the fandom have high opinions of and relate to it a lot out of most of the other groups and unit stories. Let's not beat around the bush. It's because we're all depressed. I have so much to talk about this story that I could talk for hours about why it's so good and why so many people love it, but I'll start with one of the main few big points of this. Night Court at 25 is such a good story for people because it is basically fully encompassing the harshness of reality and the cruelty that it does to people, with Enna wanting to achieve her goal of being an artist, but realizing it's not that as easy as it seems, and how painful it is to try to do that while everyone expects her to fail. And with Mizuki trying to fit in with her current school situation, and with Mafiu trying to just be able to please her family despite how harsh it is, and Kanade developing a savior complex from the guilt of what happened to her dad overworking himself. a lot of them, you can tell that a lot of them have pretty painful lives, like most people. And the end of the story basically summarizes the whole message they're trying to give us, that despite how hard their life is, despite how much it discourages them and makes them want to give up, they still keep going. And we should too, which is really amazing for a story, and I don't think there's much else I need to say about it. That's basically my whole thing for Night Court, and why everyone else loves it so much. So with all that said, I am putting Night Court at the top chart. It was one of the best. And now for what I believe to be the best main story out of all of the groups, which you can probably guess what it is given you've seen the others, is Leonid. I remember when I first saw people talk about Leonid in the past, it was always that it was boring or a bland story, but I'm gonna be honest, everyone is wrong. Now, I'm not going to rant about how great of a story it is all day, because that would take forever. Though I probably would, because let's be honest, I'm probably the biggest Ichika glazer if you know me. Anyway, contrary to popular belief, this story is actually one of the best, despite people not really caring much for it, because it is one of the most relatable stories ever, given it talks about one big thing: overcoming hardships and loss of friendships. Seriously, this story is probably the most realistic one out of all of the stories there have been in this game, and it honestly baffles me that there's so many people that don't get it. And really, because of that, out of all the stories I read, this one felt like it hit the closest to home for me out of, well, any of the other ones in comparison. It feels really relatable and also very emotional. The most emotional, if I may add. And this is actually, watching this story for the first time is what got me obsessed over Achika. Because she and her friend group are honestly a lot like me in a way, which is why I'm basically kind of biased and rate this much, much higher than all the other ones. I don't think I have much else to say about it other than it's the most realistic and the most emotional and the most relatable to our everyday lives. It's honestly hard for me to explain, but Leonid has just been so emotionally helping me and keeping me going every day that I honestly think it's very life-changing, and that Project Sekai wouldn't be the same without it. No, seriously though, I actually almost cried when I first read this story. If you know me, it is very hard for me to cry during reading or watching something. And honestly, Ichika, Chiho, Saki, and Honami are kind of misunderstood in the fandom and deserve much more love than they get. Like, really. To summarize, Leonid just has this charm of these characters being very complex, but at the same time grounded in a way that you can relate to them quite a bit. I could talk more and more about how much I love these characters and their dynamics for hours, but I think you get the point of what I'm trying to get across by now. This is why Leonid will and always will be my most favorite story out of all of the groups, and that is why I am ranking it at the top of this chart, and probably the best group out of all of them, in my opinion. Anyway, these are the final placements I've put for the stories based on my opinion of them. I hope you all enjoyed.